Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It's myself, George, bringing you a new kind of review. Not a review for a new release, but it is a review for a film that has come out this year. A film that's going to be released on DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K, and all that sort of stuff tomorrow. Which is why I'm here, of course, talking Top Gun: Maverick, the film of the year, the highest-grossing film of the year, one of the highest-grossing films in history, and genuinely one of the highlights of the year 2022. I cannot believe it's already been 5 months since this. It's 5 months since this came out. It's insane, and it's amazing at the same time. So, if you're curious, a bit of background for this, I've been very, very fortunate. I've been sent a copy of the 4K Blu-ray to review, and I am here discussing the home media release. So I'm going to say it right up front. We've never done this on the channel before. I know there's been unboxing videos in the past, whether it's been merchandise, films, and other stuff, but there's never been an actual review. And if you are familiar with the channel, you'll know that, you can see behind me, there's lots of Blu-rays and 4Ks and all that sort of stuff, as what we spoke about in videos. I'm very much on the side of the cinematic experience, and I'm also a massive physical collector. So it's kind of interesting it took 7 years for one of these to happen, if I'm being honest. Maybe there has been one off in the past and I don't remember, but to my knowledge, there hasn't ever been an actual review rather than an unboxing. And I'm not going to unbox a 4K Blu-ray, just to make that really obvious for anyone watching. But before I start getting into that sort of stuff, I'm going to actually want to hear from you guys. So comment along your thoughts on Top Gun Maverick. Yes, it's been out, 5 months now. I hope everyone's seen it. You should have seen it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's still playing at cinemas because it outlasted our last Prime Minister here in the UK, which is an incredible statistic. But that aside, as I said, please do comment your thoughts, whether you enjoyed it, whether you didn't, and just your thoughts on the experience, the hype, its box office, maybe its Oscar chances, because I think it's going to be in the conversation. Either way, I'm excited to be talking about this film once more, and I'm going to be blunt. I'm not teasing anything. There's no formal conversation, but I really hope this isn't the last chance we get to talk about Top Gun Maverick on this channel. I would love, love, love to do something much long term without hinting at what I've thought about last few months. But anyway, aside from that, as well as commenting, if you want to find out about our channel, what we do, our sort of stuff, please go find us on our social medias. That is Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinema savvy. A link to Redbubble as well, where you can pick up some merchandise if you do want to help support the channel. It's been a very busy few weeks. It's been a crazy amount of few weeks, if I'm being actually honest. So me and Tate are going to be having a chat about some things moving forward in a really good way. We're, of course, doing the Spielberg series, so many other things. So as I said, it's a really nice surprise to be able to go back to Top Gun because there's been a lot of heavy films watched recently, a lot of Spielberg films, a lot of other stuff. So this was genuinely a delight. And, also for anyone crying, saying you get given stuff to do reviews for, listen, I had pre-orders for this, and I've got another pre-order coming next if I talk about at the end. But aside from that, I'm actually going to talk about Top Gun Maverick to begin with. So, going all the way back to May, I was very fortunate to be at the press screening for that film. It was the day before the big London premiere. Everyone would have seen the photos in Leicester Square. They turned the whole of Leicester Square into, there's a fight over there. It was a massive red carpet. And the night before was the press screening. Theo from the channel was with me there. And Tom Butler, who film, was also there. And I've just got to say it's one of the best cinematic experiences of my life. I probably said that in the review. It's been a long time. I'm not going to rewatch a review in that regard. And I never got to do the spoiler review that we promised, which I'm kind of gutted about, and I have been gutted about because I'd love to have a live stream talking this for a lot of fans. So if you do want to see that, please also comment that. But here we are, a few months after. I've seen this film 5 times at the cinema. Which is insane. It's up there. It's the first ever film I've seen in 4DX as well, which was an experience to put lightly. A very actually fun experience. I'll put that out there. And the rest of them were all IMAX screenings. My very set rule of this was that I will only see this film on IMAX. And I have, as I do in a lot of these videos, discuss box office. I have studied these every week. Every week I was waiting for those numbers to come in. It was bloody amazing, following it over the following months. And now it sits at, I believe, the 11th highest grossing film of all time with over $1.4 billion. I did not see that coming. I don't think anyone would, even industry experts, even after its opening weekend, people were talking about it. Yeah, it could cross the $1 billion mark. $1.4 billion. Tom Cruise's highest grossing film of his career by almost double. Insane. and I hope the good Oscars come and follow it, as they bloody well should. But enough talking about the film. I'm going to talk about some of the behind the scenes, which only reinforces my belief. I've come on very positive tonight. I've just spent over an hour watching some special features, and that's going to kind of formulate where I'm going this review. So if you're curious about how I've kind of mapped this out, again, this is the first time I've ever done one of these. I'm going to give you my thoughts on seeing the film in 4K, which I've done today. And then I'm going to go through each of the behind the scenes segments just very quickly. I'm not going to just sit here and read off what they are, what they're about, but I'll give my thoughts on them. And then I'll have an outro, and that should do it. So again, first time doing a home media review, and thank you to Paramount for sending me out a copy, and the PR company as well. I'm just delighted to have ever been sent a film anyway. And I've already watched it, and it hasn't technically come out, which is always a bonus. But let's talk this film in 4K. I've just spoke about some IMAX experiences, so you can only imagine that my experience at home isn't that of IMAX. That's something that's quite obvious. I'm a big fan of Joseph Kosinski. If anyone's followed us, you'd know I'm a massive fan of Tron Legacy, and I love his work on that. I know Tate's a massive fan of Oblivion as well. And I think he's obviously, of course, the Tom Cruise film as well. And I think he's a very unique director. Now, I've not seen Spiderhead. I will see it by the end of the year to round up the 2022 videos. I know that came out a few weeks after Top Gun, which was interesting. But seeing this film again at home, I think the last time I saw it was probably early July. I think I saw it in early July, just before my birthday. There was a week when I was off work, basically. And I got to, I think I saw it on the Monday, and it was lovely. I was home alone. Some of the best times when you just get to go out and chill, and blaring down the motorway in the Ray-Bans with the soundtrack on the way to watch it is just exciting. And seeing the film is just incredible. As I said, every single time, it's an insane, incredible film. And I still enjoyed watching it at home. Now, obviously, my house isn't an IMAX. I would love one. If someone wants to, lend me a couple of million, however much it costs, then by all means do so. I'd love to have that set up, and I can give you an IMAX review every day. But that's obviously not the case, and I think this is the closest we can get to it. That this film isn't going to be, at cinemas for a long time, if it's still on at all. It probably will resurface if Cinema do their big IMAX day next year, as they used to do. I think this Prince Charles Cinema has been doing it in double bills as well with the original Top Gun. It's going to have a big legacy moving forward, and I keep mentioning Oscars. But I've just got to say, revisiting it today is just so amazing, that the fact it's still as good at home. And I've had this in the past where I watch some films at the cinema, I enjoy it, I buy it, I take it home, and it just doesn't hold up. I'm there on my phone, which is my fault, or I'm just not invested, and the film drops off for me. That was not the case seeing this day. And a big thing for me was obviously getting the IMAX aspect ratios as well. I think that's very important. And I'm a big believer of directors doing that. I'm a big believer in production companies doing it. It's frustrating that Marvel decided to announce it like some special ingredient for Disney, that here are the IMAX aspect ratio cuts. They should have been on there from day one. There was no excuse not to. The Dark Knight was doing it in 2008. So I appreciate them doing this. And as I said with Kosinski, he did the same with Tron Legacy. You get the full screen IMAX effect, which goes a long way. And for this film, it's just bloody gorgeous. And that moves into the 4K side of things, that I'm very fortunate the setup I have. I always sound very fortunate with it. I don't mean sound real. I put a lot of my money and time into how I watch films and how I come across with that media. So to me, it's important as somebody that enjoys it to have that kind of setup, that's a conscious choice for me to invest in that. The only thing I wish I could speak about, which I can't, is Dolby Audio, Dolby Atmos. I've been after a Dolby Atmos for a long time. To me, I just spoke about investing. That's just something I can't justify at this point in time. I would love to. I would honestly love to. And this film, and this is where I'm going to talk about this film moving forward with this home media release, that there are certain films that come into our lives, and I'm really curious if anyone at home is the same. When you buy a new TV, when you buy a new surround sound, if we're buying it for a family member and I'm setting up for them downstairs or in another room, there are certain films I would always use to test the surround sound and the visuals. Now, the pod race has always been one since I was little. Always, always, always play the pod race. Sound is everywhere. It's beautiful. It's stunning. And a few of us, Dunkirk is another one. If you want to test the bass, just put a few scenes on from Dunkirk. That's another one. Tenet, I haven't tested it on the setup, but watching that's one of the loudest ones. So, I don't need a loud film to test a surround sound. I need the quality of it, how the audio is in discussion with the effects and the soundtrack behind it, and again, how those visuals match up. And I'm just going to say Top Gun's probably leapfrogged the pod race for the first time in my life. I never thought would happen. This at home was incredible. As I said, I've got to fight. If anyone is curious about how I I know that when I've seen and read reviews for 4Ks in the past, people like name their setup. So, if anyone's curious, I've got a 55-inch Sony 4K Bravia. I've obviously using up my PS4 Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and I've got a 5:1 Panasonic surround sound. So that is my actual setup at the moment. So if you're curious about where it comes from, the 5:1 is very important to me. When I've like redecorated my room over the years, I have to align the speakers to function correctly for when I'm watching films. It's a very important part of how I have my room designed, and you obviously can't see it in the background behind me. It's actually the other half of the room, and yeah, so that's my setup heading into it. And again, I'm not just going to sit here and wax lyrical about the film itself because we need to talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff. Because as I said, the film's outstanding, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it on the Oscars night. But the behind the scenes is what was really interesting because, as I mentioned, I'm a fan of physical media, and it's a format that's slowly dying out. It will never die itself, but I've had my own theory, and my theory is that 4K will be the last ever cycle of physical media releases. I think when 8K comes around, we're starting to see them selling, is it 8K or 6K TVs? I don't think we'll ever get home media companies investing in that at the pricing discs will cost. With all that sort of stuff, I think 4K is the finale to physical media, which is a horrific shame. And I hope I'm proven wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. And that's why I think personally we're getting so many 4K great collector's box sets coming out. Every classic film that gets released in 4K seems to have a normal version and a collector's edition for like £10, £15 more. I've got a fair few of them behind me on the shelves, and I really appreciate them putting the effort into making those. And I'm sitting here with my Top Gun Maverick. I keep looking down at the copy here. For the first time in a long time, I genuinely felt like they actually put a bit of time into the special features. Some big franchises have been very lacking in what they're putting on discs now. They just want to get that film out, enjoy a 3-minute blooper reel, enjoy 5 deleted scenes, go off. That's your disc. And I yearn for the days of having that. And I understand why studios don't necessarily do that anymore, that they believe it's a dying format. They can release it all on YouTube, maybe. They can do a commentary online. They can, put it on a streaming service like Disney has the extra tabs. And I was really surprised when they announced this on the press release a few months ago, what was going to be in there. So we've got a couple we're going to talk about. We've got Cleared for Takeoff, New Ground, filming Top Gun Maverick, A Love Letter to Aviation, Forging the Dark Star, the Tom Cruise masterclass from Cannes, and then the 2 music videos. So if I get into these, I'm not going to talk about the music videos because it's just a music video, and I like the songs in the. I definitely like the One Republic one the most of this film. So I'm actually going to talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff. And what's quite important for me is if anyone's curious about my background as well, I used to work in the film industry. I was in the casting, but it was always following these big cinematic achievements that really invested me into studying film, whether it was college at A levels, whether it was my degree at uni, whether working in it, being on the sets, being on Pinewood, all that sort of stuff is very important to me. And very few films in the years following my degree have I watched, and I've been like, I would have given my right arm to have been involved in that or to have been on there for a day. And the behind the scenes for this, I've had that same feeling that I've not had in such a long time, that I would just love to be involved because it seems like an astronomical challenge, this film ever coming out. Let's ignore COVID and the pandemic and them delaying releases. This is the actual filming. This is before all of that. And the first segment, Cleared for Takeoff, is very much focused on the new cast. We get to see them going into their boot camp training, which of course they've spoken about in a lot of the press interviews, but seeing some of it firsthand, it's quite intimidating. Now, I know there's a few on YouTube that they've released. I don't think it's the exact same sequence. This one was about 10 minutes. But I've just got to say that for them, I've not got no background in acting. I never was. As I said, casting was my background. But to put these young actors through what they did, an official real military boot camp, and the genius of Tom Cruise, actually, they speak a lot about him in this, is that he would have them testing on different planes, and it was each done in a style to build them up to the F-18s, where, the first one they do is probably like I can't remember the name of it. I don't know aircraft, but they're talking about slower ones, and it's about, and then it cuts Tom Cruise saying, I had to build their spatial awareness in the sky. And then we see his evolution of him as a producer. I know Kaczynski's a director, but this is very much Tom Cruise's area. And I think there's a great line by Kaczynski saying that Tom Cruise was doing the stuff he wished he could in the 1980s for these younger actors. And that's what's resonated with me. And that is definitely a great sequence for anyone to check that is watching the behind the scenes. And it kind of doubles up love with the next one, which is just called New Ground, filming Top Gun Maverick. This is very much the stuff I was talking about where I was saying I'd love to be there. How this film was made is unbelievable. And I kind of I don't want to start piping at any fan bases or kicking off, but one thing I've seen over the summer is certain fan bases saying, why can't our films be like Top Gun Maverick? And I'm just sat there thinking, have they not actually watched Top Gun Maverick? Have they not read into it? Tom Cruise didn't want to do the sequel until someone pitched him a story 30 years later, and it had to be perfect for him to do. You can't have that with normal franchises. You won't get normal franchises. And seeing the behind the scenes of how they made it, especially the cinematography. Now, I know that's a buzzword that a lot of people use that don't actually understand what cinematography is, but for me, I'm consciously talking about the flying sequences that we know there's a second plane recording. So I'm going to ignore talking about that, but we get to see the rigs inside the planes these guys are going to be flying or co-piloting in this regard, and seeing some of the light behind the scenes of them designing new camera technology. I understand why they don't delve into that as much, that they bring it up, they mention it, we see a few things, but they're selling this to the general audience, and so am I. So I might know some technicalities of it, but I appreciate that a 4K Blu-ray won't cater to me in that regard because I've got an advanced knowledge of that. But I just think learning about some of those stuff was incredible. And going back to some of the new cast from earlier and them talking about this, training for the 5G stuff, 6G. If you're into F1, you'll hear that term used a lot. Outside of F1, you probably don't in regards to training and stuff. But seeing some of the behind the scenes of the actors filming those scenes, then coming out after a shot, knowing that they had to prepare for all scenarios inside the cockpit, it was a really interesting observation, and I think that paired up well. And then sort of following it in the sequences, we then have the next segment, which is called A Love Letter to Aviation, which is basically just a Tom Cruise segment, which is a great thing to do. The F-51, which he flies at the end and he's working on at the start of the film, I didn't know it's actually his. I feel that someone might have mentioned it this summer, and I didn't know maybe, but seeing everybody talking about it, Jennifer Connelly being involved as well, it was really interesting that they didn't have the faintest clue that Tom owned it. When certain actors pop up and we're getting interviews and they're like, yeah, Tom Cruise, that just happened to enter and we just didn't know. I absolutely love that because it really goes to show he doesn't just care about this film. Obviously, we know he cares about the film, but there's clearly this, it's called Love Letters to Aviation, but we get to see where it came from with him talking about it, his experience with it and moving forward, and how important it is for him and how this all needs to be done right with justice. And I think that's where such a core of this film lies, that people didn't just watch this film because it was Tom Cruise or because it was Top Gun or because it got good reviews. There's so many variables that come together to make this film what it is. And I think that's a massive part. That's at the forefront of his storytelling. That's at the forefront of what he's trying to do. Shooting in camera with real planes, it makes such a difference. And I'm glad to see that more of the general audience have seen the same over the summer. And I do hope that we slowly get to see that coming back. And if a few films off the top of my head, Dunkirk obviously had the Spitfires, which was glorious on IMAX, and I think that was completely surpassed by this film in all sequences. The aerial dogfighting is just something we've never seen before. And speaking of even more insane stuff we've never heard of, the next segment, Forging the Dark Star, blew my mind. So the Dark Star sequence from the opening of the film, I thought it was a real plane, as in like it's a military plane that's around that they may be able to film for a day. This was created and designed for this film. And this is really where Joseph Kosinski comes into it. So if anyone isn't curious, I think he had like a degree in architecture or something, but I remember seeing a lot of stuff when Tron came out that he was helping design the world of the grid. And they sort of very much communicate the fact he was, he'd studied in that aspect. And this he speaks about that he was almost like an aerospace technician or something like that. And that he wanted to work with an actual company as part of the Navy to develop a plane to fly in this film. And it kind of makes sense as to the whole Dark Star segment, because there's nothing quite like it. I don't want to talk too much about it. It's probably the segment that I enjoyed the most. I didn't think I would, just because I thought, a typical Blu-ray extra, here's a 5-minute set piece just talking about it. This was different. We get to see them working with the Navy, working with scientists on designing the plans. We're seeing it from drawings to construction to it being flown. And I just think that's an incredible segment. It's only 5 minutes, which is a shame. I'd love to get more. And I'm going to say about a lot of things. Not every film's The Lord of the Rings. I don't think there'll ever be as ever made an in-depth behind the scenes like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's something that will probably never be surpassed in terms of, that behind the scenes stuff, and even modern Lord of the Rings box sets don't include any of that anymore. So that really goes to show where the industry's heading, and it's just very grateful to get these set pieces, these segments that you can tell that even if it's a few minutes, getting that insight is so valuable to us as viewers. And kind of following that, one that took me by surprise on the press release too is the masterclass of Tom Cruise from Cannes. So Obviously, this film premiered at Cannes just the day before the UK, I think. And Tom Cruise sat down for a masterclass. I think it was his second ever appearance at the festival. He was given like a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I remember a lot of interviews, he was clearly very emotional receiving that. This is a 50-minute segment. This is the actual, the actual masterclass. I'm not going to give specifics from it, but it is the best thing on this, for me at least, as a fan of Tom Cruise. And what's really interesting is seeing this before the film came out. He's talking about him being back with audiences, enjoying being with fans, and seeing faces and being in person. And my only criticism of this Blu-ray, and I understand why it might have been here, is there's nothing post the release. I understand why there isn't. We're still in the early days of that. I said that there could be a whole Oscar run for it to get a legacy talking about as the years go by, but there's something to me that I just wish we had something a bit more in the present, but I'm going to let time sink in for that. And this is definitely a segment that any Tom Cruise fan will probably enjoy. But yeah, that's kind of all of it. Again, I've never done a home media review. I hope this has gone okay. It's longer than the actual other Top Gun review, which is not a shame, but I just wish we could have had a Top Gun Maverick spoiler discussion, or maybe even a live watch along. Who knows? Comment that if you want to see more Top Gun Maverick stuff, because I certainly would love to get more Maverick. I know a lot of people that enjoy that film we could probably get on for a stream. So if you would like some more Top Gun Maverick stuff, please do let us know. Aside from that, as I said, this was the first home media release. If you'd like more of these, let us know. It's something we've always wanted to do on the channel. It's something I'd love to do more of moving forward. I do enjoy seeing new releases. I also enjoying seeing films remastered, put on 4K, negative scans. As you can see behind me, there's a lot of films there. And we've discussed in the past, videos setting up, showing off not showing off, I hate that term, but going through the home media collections. That was a very popular trend amongst lockdown. I didn't do it. If anyone's curious, I've got about 600 Blu-rays. I'm not going to count DVDs. So that kind of says where my space is at. So if you'd like to see some more home media stuff, please do comment. As I said, love to get involved. I do buy a lot of these films as well, and I'm more than happy to talk about them in a bit more detail. And it's a nice way to bring up conversations about films maybe we didn't get a chance to do earlier in the year, films we may have missed, or something else. So please do comment, get involved, and if you do enjoy this video, please like it and subscribe. There is hopefully more Maverick coming. We'll let you know more details if and when that does come. But as I said, your commenting along does help that, just so we can see that people would like to see it too. And if you're curious about any of the releases, any of the videos we might do, we tend to announce them on our social medias. That's Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, and you can get our merch in the red bubble link below. As we've said, this has been a pretty fun video, very different video. I want to thank anyone that's tuned in to watch this today. There's a lot of other stuff happening on the channel. We've got the Spielberg retrospective continuing on Tuesday with The Post. We've got Andor on Wednesdays. We're heading into Oscar season. We're getting new releases. We're getting much better films coming out, and we're heading into November. So that's going to do it for today's review. As I said, Top Gun Maverick is released on Blu-ray tomorrow. You can purchase it in the UK tomorrow. That's the purpose of this. There's a link in the description as well. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.